And good evening and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Welcome back to Jeff Gress as back in studio, back live on the radio after a Christmas night off. And only one holiday do we take off. That's Christmas.
Well, it's a good feeling to be back. I got to say, because my wife was giving me a hard time in here, so I want to tell her, because they don't listen a lot because they hear the sound of my voice enough at home. So they said they were going to listen quick. So if she is, my car ride was comfy because she's making fun of me for warming my car up. To my beautiful daughter, I say hi. To my son, he better have his band extra credit done. But it's good to be back in the studio.
Tonight we're going to be talking a lot about high school girls and boys basketball. Talk some hockey as well. Only one guest, because our second guest, and again, there's been a lot going on in terms of people under the weather here in central Wisconsin. We were lined up to have Merrill High School boys basketball coach Troy Pieper join us, as they had a pretty good week going into this Wednesday evening. But unfortunately, the coach is a little bit under the weather today, so hopefully he'll be feeling better, and we'll definitely reschedule to have him on a little bit later on in the season, or who knows. Real fast. People wonder how we decide this. I always decide it, basically a couple of days before the show starts. It's not a big plan here where I've got a whole list of people for the next 5 weeks. I'll figure it out for our next week's guests by the end of this coming weekend, see how things are going. So maybe, who knows, maybe if Merrill keeps playing well, we'll ask Coach Pieper back on next week. But at some point, we'll have Coach Troy Pieper of the Merrill Blue Jays with us during the course of the season. But we will have our student-athlete guest coming up, Jake Hane. He is a senior, one of the captains of the Wausau West hockey team. Warriors 8-4 on the season, had a good weekend over in Green Bay at the Showdown in Titletown, and we'll talk to Jake Hane about his season, his hockey career, his role as a captain, and a whole bunch more coming up at 7:06 tonight. So that's on the itinerary. I'm sure even now with little extra time, we'll have to dig into some of Jeff Gress's topics by the time we get to the
make it sound like
hours.
It's this eccentric thing. We'll see.
We're
living in the moment, so we'll see what we have.
You got all these interesting thoughts and topics that you want to talk about.
I appreciate you talking me up like that, because it makes it sound like it's really intriguing. So a lot of pressure.
Stick around for the end, because you never know what he'll pull out from this long list, this thick list.
Area grievances. We'll start with.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. As we start off the new year, and glad you could be with us on this New Year's night here on 98.9 WXCO. And by the way, we were not on last week, but we did record a podcast. So if you go to our podcast page by going to civicmedia.us and clicking on shows, or go to go to WXCO.FM and then click on air. That will take you to the show page as well. And you can go to the Big High School Sports Show page and hear our podcast only episode from last week, Thursday. But let's jump in and talk about what's going on in high school boys basketball to begin with. Wisconsin Valley Conference, and the conference standings remain the same as when we did our podcast last week, but just looking at where these teams stand, you got two teams that are undefeated and only 2 games into the season, so only 2 teams left undefeated, Marshfield and Wausau West. Wausau West is 7-2 overall. Marshfield is 4-4. Then you have at 1-1 both Wausau East and Stevens Point Lumberjacks, 9-1 overall on the season. Stevens Point is 6-4. At 0-1 is both Merrill and Wisconsin Rapids. Merrill is 6-4 overall. Rapids still looking for their first win. They're 0-8. And DC Everest is 0-2 in the WVC, but the Evergreens are 5-5 overall. And looking at some of the action, and 2 of the teams, the top 2 teams, in fact, in the conference standings were down in Florida over the holiday week. Both Wausau West and Marshfield were down in Florida, playing games on Friday, Saturday, and Monday. And Wausau West went 2-1 in their trek to the south. They lost their first game on Friday to Fordham Prep 38-35, but then they bounced back and defeated St. Albert Catholic of Alberta, I should say, a Canadian team, 63-26. And then on Monday, wrapped things up, beating Christ Church Academy of Florida 51-30. Meantime, Marshfield, they were the opposite. They won their first game, defeating Knoxville Catholic of Tennessee 67-58, but then on Saturday and Monday they fell. as on Saturday they lost a tight one to Middletown, Ohio, 46-42. And then on Monday, lost to Olentangy Liberty of Ohio, 61-54. And obviously, we don't know how good, say, Fordham Prep is, or or the team from Alberta is. A couple of things that are interesting. I know that Marshfield during the entire weekend, Landon Lee had a good weekend. I know he had 29 points on Friday. I know he had more than 20 on Saturday. Not sure what the numbers were on Monday. So he had a good week. And also something that kind of jumped out to me, and I was looking at a little bit of what was going on down there. The state of Wisconsin plays halves. But most of the rest of the country still plays quarters, and they still play 8-minute quarters. They're shorter games.
Right.
And I'm kind of curious to talk to Coach Nate Lemons when Wausau West returns to action next Tuesday, and I'm kind of interested to see if it feels differently, if the game goes by faster, if quarters go by quicker. Does the feel of a game go by quicker? But generally, obviously. Don't know the competition, but at the same time, as you've talked about, 3 games in 4 days, going to Florida, spending a lot of time together. Both these teams off to good starts in the conference. This can't do anything but help them.
No, I think it's if you can afford to go, get all your families on board, get all the working parts in order, because from a program perspective and a coaching perspective, there's a lot of organization I think that is involved in that, and programs I think appreciate that as much as coaches do when you can get your players down for something to do like this, and I think it does nothing but good to go play these games and see what else is out there. Sometimes we get stuck, whether we're stuck in our area of the state or we're just stuck in our state based on how things are sanctioned and teams play. It's cool, I think, when you get outside and play a team. If they go to the Border Bash and play a team from Minnesota, or you're playing a team from Illinois, and so I think it's neat to do that. Your perspective of the quarters halves brings up an interesting thing. I always used to like the breaks when we had quarters, and that was my biggest fear, is I'm losing extra time to talk to the kids and work on things, because you had some natural timeouts built in those quarterly breaks. But the more we got into halves, I love the flow of it. So I'll be curious to see what you report back on Coach Lemons' take on that. And I think it's cool for the kids to play those different styles too, to shake it up a little bit. But I think
it is a rather significant amount of time, though. I mean,
that's
2 minutes in each half is quite a bit, isn't it?
Yeah. I think, I mean, the time thing is different. I just think I think at the end of the day, it makes, if your players are exposed to different situations, I think they just inherently build up a toughness, or they're not thrown by any adversity, and I think it makes you tougher down the stretch. So to say, hey, we're going to lose some minutes, but now we're trying this style of play, let's go pull out a couple W's doing something that we don't routinely do, but these other teams do. I just think makes you better along the way in terms of any adverse circumstance that can pop up in a basketball game and those little moments that happen. But I think no harm done, even if you go, let's just say you go down there and go 0-3. Mm-hmm. My next question to you would be, how does this, win-losses is kind of the only thing that jumps in on that seeding stuff, right? So I don't know what these other teams' records are, because they're out of state.
How do out-of-state games be put into the computer?
That was the one thing when you were talking about that. I'm thinking, where does this jostle into the seeding? But I think getting out there and seeing is good. So I think for Marshfield and West, challenging yourselves, overall, bottom line, the team bonding stuff, the downtime sitting in the hotel room, the time when these guys are on their video games, the times when families are hanging out at the pool, whatever it is, or beach or whatever it is, I think is a big deal where they get to spend that time together. So I think all in all, it was a win situation for Marshfield and West going down there, and hopefully it was, when we talked to the coaches, competitive-wise, was it worth their time to go see some good competition? Score-wise, it looks like that. It looks like they had some good games that were tighter in score, which, again, pushes your team a little bit, whether you win or lose those games.
Okay, so then Wausau East was also in a tournament this weekend, and on Friday they defeated Omro. The game was in Omro, 77-67. Jesse Napgeza continues to fill it up. He's had big scoring nights, I think, almost every game in the first 10 this season. 32 points. He also pulled down 9 rebounds. Teddy Schlindwein had 14 in that game for East, and then on Saturday, Lumberjacks came back and rolled past Berlin, 81-57. Another 28-point effort for Napgezuk, and Charlie Cayley, a double-double, 16 points, 13 boards. Jaden Garrett had 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists in that game. 9 wins, 1 loss overall for Wausau East. Obviously, they just, in a lot of these games, are like these games, double-digit wins.
Yeah, they're playing really well. It shows in the record. That's all you got to see is 9-1 start is a nice start to the season. I think when you can go on the road into somebody else's gym, especially when you're at their home tournament, and get those W's, in terms of beating Amro and then turn around beating Berlin, is a good feeling. You never know what your team always has coming out in these tournaments. Kids are a little less focused, maybe a little less disciplined because they don't have the regimen of the school day that kind of sets up their routine for them. So it's nice to see when your team can go out and execute and significantly win a couple of games on the road against competition that you're not used to seeing. It's not a team you're familiar with. It's somebody you're going to see that one time. And I think, every time you read the numbers, you're getting production out of it. Nip Gezik's a score. Jaden Garrett is putting a couple points on the board, dumping the ball down to the guys, and Kaylee's taking care of the boards, and those guys are putting up those numbers consistently for East.
And also, it was a nice way to bounce back from their first loss. They had that game against Marshfield where, obviously, I'm sure there was a lot riding on it early in the season against the multiple-time defending conference champs, and they had been undefeated and then kind of had a rough night at home. To come right back and get back on the bike and do what they had been doing for the previous 7 games is also something that kind of stands out. They didn't let this kind of stew and then maybe have back-to-back losses or anything like that.
And a team that's ready to vie for that conference title, try to go fight for it, is going to get right back on the wagon and do what they can do in every basketball game to continue to prove themselves that they belong up there. So I'm hoping things, there's no sleepers in the conference. It's going to be tough tests every time they have these conference games, but hoping that it plays out from our spectator point of view that Marshfield has one loss or no losses, and the East continues just to have that one loss, and they get to fight each other over at Marshfield for that conference title.
It was a busy week for Merrill. They had a tournament on the weekend, Friday and Saturday, and then added a non-conference road game on Monday, and they ended up winning 2 of the 3 games. On Friday, they fell to Edgewood 62-55, E.J. Wykes 15, Corey Page 11 points, 9 rebounds, and then on Saturday, Merrill came back and defeated Mayville 75-54. Corey Page 25 points, 11 boards, Jacob Smeltzer 14, Tyson Ott 11, and then right back at it, went up to Minocqua on Monday night and defeated Lakeland 52-42. Apparently it was a night where Coach Pieper sent to me some information saying that it was not a great offensive night, but they were able to dig in defensively, able to do that and be able to use the defense in order to get a nice win again, one of those games against a team that's part of the Division II bracket that you'll be dealing with coming up in February and March. But the thing that kind of jumps out is Page. He had just returned in the Medford game the previous week, and obviously 6'2" senior, somebody that I know Pieper was very happy to have back, and he's jumped right in and played very well in the first 4 games he's been part of.
Yeah, for Merrill, I like the setup. You never looked at your break. You always just look to get a game in or a couple games in. Or some teams want to stay dormant and not play over the break and give that time back for their players to focus and rest a little bit. And I like this setup. I think they're the only team that, unless I'm missing somebody else that we cover, had a tournament and then also had another game built in there in it. I think it broke it up to give them good action. And, they saw good competition in Edgewood. They beat Mayville and to bounce back and get a significant win for seeding against Lakeland. And I think it's a big deal, like you said, with what Coach Pieper shared, is you're going to have nights where you rely heavily more on one side than the other. We can't shut down this team real well, but we're outscoring them. We're going to play great defense tonight. We're going to hold them within 40 because we're not hitting the baskets that we normally hit. And I think that the versatility in not only knowing your team well, but having them be able to understand that sometimes we're going to have some highs and lows, and it's how we fight through that and make part of our game stronger to fill the void of which part of our game's not working out for that given night for whatever circumstances is a big deal. Every coach always wants to have their best players on every given night without injury or sickness. So for Page to come back, you can obviously just look on the stats that he's putting up the baskets for him. And, him and Wykes, just Wykes by himself, I saw them play earlier in the year against Newman, was a good opponent, was a good player out on there. Now to add that extra versatility and Page coming in there from the scoring angle and whatever else he brings to the middle of the floor there, I think just adds another dimension for Merrill to be. You just be a stronger team when you get all your guys back. So good thing for them.
It was a good weekend for Stevens Point at the Century Classic. They won a pair of games. They beat Beaver Dam on Friday, 64-56 in overtime, and then on Saturday beat Watertown 63-51. Grant shot an 18 in that game against Watertown. They've had at least 3 overtime games already this year. I mean, they've been, and those all in non-conference games. Obviously, Stevens Point is playing a very significant non-conference schedule, playing some tough minutes, and again, Stevens Point's that team. It's January the 1st. I mean, I think everybody in the conference has been looking at that because there's going to be a major upgrade with 6'9" young man joining up for Stevens Point.
Yeah, and that's I don't know. The coaches are going to take it because they're competitors, as are the kids. But still, I just think that's that's something that doesn't happen all the time. Especially, sometimes you get guys back, but you know what you have in this kid coming back with his size, his strength, the numbers he put up. And for him, he's been waiting for, I mean, if I'm him, I'm waiting for this moment. Get me back on the court in a game situation, please. I've practiced, put my time in, not that it's a penalty, but the transfer rule paid that time back to the WIA that I had to sit out. So, let's get going here. So I think for Spash, they're playing good non-conference competition. They're sitting at 6-4.
And the young man's name is Jaden Owie. Just have to make sure of that. And real quickly about him, real fast, because I'm sure you were there when Pacelli played Newman a couple of years back in that sectional game over at Wausau West, and he was part of that Pacelli team. And I remember him, being athletic, but not, being, he was tall, obviously, but he had not filled in. Yeah. I'm just curious to see after a couple of years whether or not he is, maybe filled in a little bit. He's 6 feet 9 inches tall, and obviously got great ability. I know, and when I went down to Stevens Point a few weeks ago for the Wausau West game, talking to somebody from Stevens Point, that he's been practicing, so it's not going to be a case where he has not working at all with these teammates. But again, it's going to be one of those very interesting things coming up here in the next number of weeks.
And he may even get a little extra time in because some of those guys that aren't your lifting schedule can be coordinated with your game schedule. And if he's lifting a lot and putting a lot of time into that strength and conditioning on the side, he doesn't have to worry about being fatigued for a game where other guys are going to have to maneuver that around a little bit. So I think for Spash, a couple of nice wins. The overtime games are a great test right away, and especially when you're pulling them out, or if you're losing, you can learn a lot about that. And to go out, run around on the college court is a good overall tournament experience from seeing some of those different competitions in Beaver Dam and Watertown.
DC Evers played later. In fact, they played Monday and Tuesday. Played some Big Rivers teams, and on Monday they lost to River Falls 47-40, and then last night defeated Menominee 61-51. As I said earlier, they're a team that's 500. They've been sort of in that realm during the course of the season so far. We've spoken about the massive loss of Cohen Preby. Everest, again, there's still some very good talent on that team, but they're 0-2 in the conference. Obviously, the 2 games they played in the conference have both been very tough opponents, Marshfield and Stevens Point, so I wouldn't take too much out of that. So they're still going to be, I'm really curious to see them in person next Tuesday when they come to Wausau to take on West. But what about DC Everest? Obviously, that's a good couple of games against those teams. Again, bigger schools in the western part of the state.
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate enough to talk to Coach Drake last year, and if we talk to him this season, I'm sure he'll share some of the insights of that. But I remember whenever if our point guard was sick or went down with an injury, it always, I don't know, you love that little on the floor court general, that extra assistant coach out there. That's what point guards are. They have this innate opportunity to just naturally, they're leaders. They're your guaranteed leadership for the most part, usually one of the more reliable kids in the court. So to not have that, especially out of a 4-year starter, that's a little transition for any team. But I still think, coaches know each other so well in the Valley and know those teams. You're not going to look past Everest. Like you said, the 2 teams they took losses to are 2 of the teams that are probably going to be hanging around the top. And they still have, if you look at their statistics, they've got
3 double digits.
Yeah, 3 guys putting up 12-plus points. Yeah. So I think they're going to be in the thick of things, and they're probably one of those teams that just look to try to keep finding consistency in that win total, because that's going to be a big deal going forward, how much stronger these guys can get if they're able to get Preby back from injury and be at full strength.
One of the things that sort of jumped out about them as well early this season, again, just from the outside, again, just keeping an eye on them. I mean, you don't know all the details on a game-by-game basis, but I watched the game they played against Eau Claire North earlier this year, and when they get
hot, they are scary good. I mean, they were hitting some shots and they were getting, really racking up some points. And then you see games where they score 40 points. That surprises me in a sense. So, and I know that in terms of the way the coach Drake runs his team, that it's a team that I think that God has the he does not put the reins on them very tightly. So again, I just think that's a team that could be a very different looking team as we get deeper into the season. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, and those teams are scary when all of a sudden you start adding these pieces back. I mean, from the time when I played to when I coached, teams can be very different from the beginning of the year to the start of the year when you battle through all those injuries. And it's just kind of, to your players, you reinforce, let's stay the course. Let's just kind of get as many W's as we can, looking to get a little better. And I think just from watching Everest last year, seeing when I saw them play, their size, the way they're able to put the ball in the basket, they got a lot of weapons. And sometimes maybe it just takes getting that one key piece back of the puzzle that makes you 100 times more dangerous than you originally were when a team thought they got all over you in the beginning half of the season, and now you're a very formidable foe in the second half.
And obviously with the Valley, every year it's this way in the Valley. Some conferences have played 5-6 games by this point. There's only 2 games basically for most of the Valley teams, even one game for I think Merrill's only played 1 game if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, you are correct.
Yeah, 1 game for Merrill. So again, so much is still to play for. It gets interesting now we get to January, especially in the Wisconsin Valley Conference.
Which is the way they build their conference.
Yep.
You know, they play a lot of these non-conference games early. I like it. You get a feel for your team. You can see strengths and weaknesses, improvements needed, and then you get that settled in when you want to dial in and go for that conference title. So good things.
We're going to take a 1-minute timeout and then come back and talk about the rest of the boys' action that's going on here in Central Wisconsin. We'll talk a little bit about the girls' action later on in this hour. Again, we will have our student-athlete guest coming up at 7:06, Jake Hane from Wausau West Hockey, and we'll look ahead to, again, really get into the conference action in the next week as we turn the calendar to 2025. So still plenty to talk about as we continue here on the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. On Friday night, it's the first game of 2025 for the Marathon High School boys basketball team as the Red Raiders travel to Neillsville for a non-conference matchup. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Coverage begins with the pregame show at 7 and the opening tip set for 7:15. Marathon basketball on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by Marathon Park City, Four Seasons Screen Printing, Brickners of Little Chicago, County Materials, the People's State Bank, Marathon Cheese, the Dirks Group, Marathon Family Dentistry, and the Marathon Athletic Club. It's Marathon at Neillsville in high school boys basketball. Friday night, starting with the pregame show at 7, opening tip at 7:15 on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Along with Jeff Gress, I am Chad Holmes, as we will now talk about the Great Northern Conference in high school boys basketball. You got Mosinee, Rhinelander, both off to great starts. So Rhinelander 3-0 in the conference, 7-1 overall. Mosinee is 8-1 overall, 2-0 in the conference. Then you have Medford, who is 1-1 in the conference, but 3-5 overall. Antigo, 5-3 overall, 1-2 in the conference. Lakeland, 3-5 and 1-2 in the league. Northern Pines, 6-4 overall, but 1-2 in the conference. And Tomahawk at 3-5 and 0-2 in the conference. And looking at some of the action, Mosinee, they went over, and they were over at the Green Bay Preble, the Sundrop thing over at Preble, and they were able to win twice. They defeated Southern Door 72-64 on Friday. Carson Balgord, 23 points. Braden Reinke, 16. Treve Stoffel, 11. And then on Saturday, they were able to knock off the host school Preble 75-64. And Braden Reinke had a number of double-doubles, a big double-doubles. He had 29 points and 15 rebounds. And then Treve Stoffel had a triple-double. We haven't seen too many of those in the high school ranks this season. Stoffel
Buffalo had 20 points, 10 rebounds, and dished out 14 assists. So obviously, when you look at Mosinee 8-1, and they're also a team that it's not a soft 8-1. They've played some pretty good competition.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that you're going to that side of the state and challenging yourself. Like we talked about Southern Door being in that conference, with that weird conference with 2 through 5 teams and kind of go after each other. So I think Mosinee's playing really consistent basketball right now, whether they're pulling out tight ones, playing a wide variety of teams from hosting their own tournament at Thanksgiving to the teams that they've seen over Christmas here, and some nice wins on the road versus Southern Door and Green Bay Preble. And I know, not to get too far ahead, I think they come back and they play Brilliant. They're at Brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's a nice another game to get into before they get into conference play. The thing from being on the outside, like we often say, looking in with these teams, because we're not seeing every game that they play, I like the fact that, you've heard of Stoffel and what he can do when he showed up with that triple-double. But you see Reineke's name popping up consistently, and those guys are, doing well. And I just love the idea that, you're not a one-trick pony. When you get that balance, you get multiple players throwing it in when the top dog doesn't get those numbers that they normally give and somebody else pops up. I think that's the thing that makes this fun. And to Mosinee's credit, 2-0 conference start and an 8-1 start is an excellent first half of the season.
And Rhinelander has been very good so far. The 3-0 in the conference. They are now 7-1 overall, and for the first time this season, in fact, they lost, but they were down at the Wisconsin Dells in that event, and they on Friday defeated Ripon 76-47. Devin Feck had 19 points, and Truman Lamers had 13. But then they ran into Wisconsin Dells, a team that is 6-2. Very solid program for a number of years as well. And Dells beat Rhinelander 70-42. Feck had 14. But it's interesting when a team has won a lot of games, and then all of a sudden you lose, and you lose by 28 points. That can sometimes be a little shock to the system, can it?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I remember we'd come out and start the season off. First, this is only when you played like 5 or 6 games before Christmas, and then you went to a tournament over Christmas break, and we'd get to a different area of the state, and for whatever reason, you'd have a letdown. Kids wouldn't play that well, didn't get off the bus right, whatever it was. And the most important next moment is how you turn around and play that next game. And for them, I think on Friday they have to go over to East, which is a game that I'm looking forward to seeing how those two wail on each other a little bit from the different conferences. But I think that the idea is how we coming back from that. What do we learn from that? And I think it can be a good thing at the end of the day. I mean, you don't want that for coaches that score probably bugs you a little bit. The players probably move on and are ready for the next game eventually by now. So I think off to a great start, and Coach Lemons has been around up there in Rhinelander for a long time. He's going to figure out what they need to do to get ready to play, and they're going to play East tough on Friday. That'll be a good game.
The rest of the conference is interesting. And normally the teams that kind of are up there in the top half are Medford and Lakeland. And so far this season, both those schools have struggled a little bit. I saw Medford play Wausau West. I saw them on the stream play Merrill. They still got some talent, but it's not quite the same as it was. They had a really good couple of groups that went through over the last 4 or 5 years. It's a team that I think just doesn't have the same ability to put the ball in the hole, even though they were hot at times, especially in the game against Merrill. And then you have Lakeland, who has kind of been teetering downward a little bit the last number of years. I think it just hasn't been quite the same. And then you have Pines at 6-4 overall, Antigo at 5-3. I would say that both those schools, if you dig a little deeper, have not played the schedules that either Medford or Lakeland tend to play either. But I guess your thoughts on what else you see when it comes to the Great Northern.
Well, Medford, I think, is still trying to figure out that identity of this year's team. That you can just see it in the scores where it's popping up. I think they're still always going to be a formidable foe when you show up. Not a team you can fall asleep against because, like you said, they have the ability to get hot, but maybe just not as many potent players offensively that can scar that other team so much. And I think you're going to have Rhinelander, Mosinee fighting for that top spot. Medford might be able to creep up on a couple teams, but obviously you can tell in the scores need a little more consistency. Lakeland, tough one to figure out. They used to be kind of that spoiler. Now it's like, are you still fighting in the middle of the pack? Or are you trending down towards the bottom of that conference? And
it does seem like every year
that's what it sees out of scores.
They had Ted Voigt for all those years, and then they had from Rhinelander,
Rich Fortier.
Rich Fortier, exactly. And now, last couple of years, they brought in the coach, I think Jared.
I think Janice Fasu or something. I can't say it right. I apologize.
So I think right now they're a little transition. I mean, because they had 2 veteran coaches for such a long time.
Well, and I think I believe this is his second year, right?
Yes.
So the thing with that is, it's, you learn a lot from year 1 to year 2, and you get better as a coach because you just have more experience, and you're still in the same program with the same guys, except for the ones you lose due to graduation. And it takes some time to go down sometimes and make that youth program what you want out of it, whether you're getting coaches in place, whether you're getting the players to buy in, whether you're even starting at a lower grade level to stay up with the Joneses. So we never know where the switches that the coach makes to kind of rectify that program to be their own, to find the success, whether it's deeper in the youth level, is in your middle school. So I'm sure, knowing what I know out of him as a coach, he's diving down in there and working on things to get it to be his own, and you want to get that consistency.
And that's obviously one of the great things about Rhinelander and Mosinee right now is the stability they've had in those programs for a very long time.
Yeah, you when your coaches are around and they know the kids walking the hallways, they know the kids in their middle school and elementary school programs, all that. Just it takes time to solidify and time to build it and make it your own, and I think that's the beauty of that. So it's kind of playing out a little bit, unless there's any spoilers here. Mosinee, Rhinelanders sticking on the top. I think those other teams are going to be fighting, like we said, Medford, Lakeland, to be a spoiler or fight for the middle of the pack. I'm still a little uncertain on Pines in there. Anago Tomahawks seem to kind of find that, by scores reflecting, are going to have to fight down in that bottom. But for Northland Pines, sometimes I think they could knock somebody off based on what we saw against when they played West and Newman early on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
when we were talking last week about a game that kind of was an oddball score.
They have Mosinee coming back, not this week, but the next week. So it'll be interesting to see how they turn and play against them, because we kind of know where Mosinee stands.
Marywood South, and it's pretty much normal Marywood South. A lot of good teams at the top. You got Auburndale, Stratford, and Marathon all tied at 4-1. Auburndale, Stratford 8-1 overall. Marathon 5-3. Then Assumption 3-2 in the conference. But boy, they're struggling out of conference. They're 3-6. Edgar 1-4, 3-6, and Newman Catholic 0-5 and 1-8. Marathon. Nice win on Friday. They beat Columbus Catholic 65-54. Ian Shuda 16, True Thirds 13. Garrett Bracewell 10 for Marathon. And I'm curious. I'll be seeing Marathon Friday night at Neelsville. That's always a really good place to go play a non-conference game. And then they go to Colby on Monday, and I'll have that game as well. I'm curious to see the steps that they're taking, because I know in talking to Coach Jacobson before the Newman game and talking even about that Stratford game, he was a little bit concerned about the turnovers. And I think we saw too many against Newman, and I know he thought there was too many against Stratford. But I just have a feeling that they're going to tighten that up, and all of a sudden they're getting very dangerous. And the fact that at this point, on January the 1st, with all the people that they lost last year, that they're tied for first in this conference, I think is very impressive.
Yeah, I think as coaches, we're always going to be picky, and we're going to want our teams to get better, and we're going to harp on the things that probably aren't, at the end of the day, that bad.
But I don't think he's harping. I think they were too, because they had more than 20 in both those games. That's not Marathon-like.
Right. I guess things that you're getting after them for and wanting to do. What I'm impressed with.
How am I being the hard one and you're being soft on turnovers? I tell you.
Well, I think you never want to turn the ball over too much, but the's always something to work on. And I think as coaches, sometimes we get stuck in that. But that's what makes the kids better and the team better too. What I'm impressed with right now with Marathon is just they don't have a big scoring punch. The two leading scorers are hitting 9. And in their defense, too, they had some ups and downs over the summer and in the fall with all these kids play football. They had some summer injuries and kids coming back from stuff. And we never know on a daily basis, is there a setback that something get dinged up again and it hurts again, or are they fully healed? So for them, I think that consistency and what they're doing as a team, sitting at 5-3 overall, 4-1 in the conference, beat Stratford early on, which is a big win for the top. That Columbus Catholic is always Coach Konitschke over there coaches them very well. They're coming off that state title. I don't care what they lost. They're still going to try to light you up from the three-point line because that's their style. So on a given night, you don't know what you got. And to beat them by double digits, I think, is a good win. And then I think you turn around the Friday game you're going to have, because what you'll probably mention in a minute here, Auburndale had them. And you get kind of a matchup there for that. But I think Marathon, those coaches have been there for a long time and had a lot of success. And they know what Marathon basketball is and what they want it to be and the expectations that they have and the rich tradition. They're going to do nothing but improve based on all those things, I think. So you're going to see a team that I'm sure it was poster board material that when the yearbook came out, they weren't sitting where they wanted to sit. So I'm sure that's hanging up in the locker room to prove what they want out of this season.
And actually, I saw today earlier They were celebrating the 50th anniversary of that three-peat state championship they had back in the 1970s. So that just shows, again, the tradition that they have in Marathon, that they just keep on keeping on each and every year. Mentioned Stratford and Auburndale, and you said it. Both those schools had their home holiday events. Stratford easily beat Manawa 72-34, and then they beat Owen Withy 54-38. And Auburndale beat Wyowega Fremont 59-48, and then beat Neilsville 66-43 on Monday. Obviously, both those teams played very well.
Yeah, I actually watched some of the Stratford Owen Withy game, and it was just Stratford just kind of wears you down. They're waiting for that extra pass, snap the bounce pass when you're not paying attention. They're going to seal the guy in the post and get it in there and do a nice move to finish off the play. And for Stratford's just going to get the job done, whether it's going to be on the defensive or offensive. So they're always going to be in the mix of things. Obviously, they manhandled Manawa, but for Owen Withy, they had some size and length, and they have some history with them, always playing them in this tournament, and another nice win for Stratford there. So they're going to be they're sitting at 8-1, which is a nice start too. Auburndale, I like that. They played Saturday, then they took Sunday off, then they went back to Monday. I kind of need to have. You never hear of a tournament being overlapped by a day break unless it's a big tournament, not your own with 4 teams. So Neilsville, they've always been in the thick of things in that Clover Belt Conference, and so a significant win for Auburndale there, and not sure why we go, but again, 8-1, 4-1 overall. So some very good overall records with conference records too, sitting in the wings, and they're all going to jump back against the North, where I think some of these teams are going to own those northern teams.
In our podcast last Thursday, we talked about the tough first game that Assumption had against Amherst at the Century Classic, and then they faced Bonduelle, who we've talked about a lot in the CWC East, and Bonduelle really put the clamps on Assumption on Saturday. It was 27-8 at halftime, and then Bonduelle won 55-29. It's interesting, again, I know there's expectations this year for Assumption, but right now they've been a little bit up and down. They had the big win against Auburndale, the only game that Auburndale's lost all year, but yet there's been other times where they just have not played very well.
And the inconsistency would probably drive you bonkers as a coach and makes you lose sleep. They have a very good junior class, and again, if I had to go back and reflect on my time coaching, sometimes juniors are ready to just kill it. They're in senior mode, and they're like, "This is it. We got to get moving. We got 2 years." And sometimes juniors are like, "You know what? I still got a little time here." So I don't know where their mindset is at. I mean, obviously, they want to win, they want to do well, but they have some up and down. I don't know if that goes how they shoot the ball, because they have the ability to put the ball in the basket a lot. And, when I watched them play Marathon a little bit against Assumption, it was just kind of this there was some wearing down moments where Marathon just wore them down based on being, you had this 2 different styles. You had more disciplined, a little bit more deliberate in where the ball was going, where Assumption, was a little bit more loose. And sometimes that plays into your advantage. Other times you can turn the ball over extra moments on a timer, take some quick shots that are ill-advised and people aren't ready to react. So I think you have a little bit of that inconsistency because Assumption plays a little bit more free yet, and there's maybe not quite that desperation because their bulk of their class is juniors. But another team that I would never overlook. Schleifer's filling it up with about 20 a game. So, and I know he's got a nice supporting cast around him in that class. So, again, a team that we could be talking in a couple of weeks, and they get it together, and they're knocking off some of these top teams in that conference.
And the thing is, conference-wise, they're 1 game out of first. I mean, those poor efforts. I shouldn't say poor efforts, but poor results have been mainly on the non-conference side.
Right.
They had a tough Cranberry Classic. Then they had a tough Century Classic. Those are the 4 non-conference games that have 0-4.
Yeah, when I watched Amherst play a fast style basketball against Newman. That's somebody I would want to see in my non-conference schedule as well. And Bonduelle, we've talked about Bonduelle before, even though they're not in this area. That's a good non-conference opponent.
Yeah, they're 9-0, 4-0 in the CWC East, and real quickly in the CWC East. We're talking a little bit more because there's really no action in the Merriwood North last week. Well, when we talk about next week, we'll kind of go over the standings there. But Bonduelle 9-0, 4-0. Whitburn 4-0 in the conference as well, 5-1 overall. Iola 6-2 overall, 3-1 in the conference. Shiocton 2-2 in the league, 5-3 overall. Amherst 5-5 and 1-3. Menominee Indian 4-4, 1-3. Wyowega Fremont 3-6 and 1-3. And Bondwell, I mean, they came to the big court over at UWSP, and they were very impressive. I mean, the 82-42 over Pacelli, who's always a pretty solid program. And then, as we mentioned, they were able to roll past Assumption, and they got their first matchup with Whitburn coming up.
And that's the game I marked down here in my notes was
Whitburn hasn't played.
Yeah, and Wittenberg,
which we talked about in the podcast last week.
Been off for a little
so
while.
You can hear that if you go back and listen to it.
But I think for Bondwell, obviously sticking at the top of that conference. Last year, they won the conference too. I'm not quite sure I know they lost a couple of those guys to graduation, but I think it was a junior senior mix. I think so. Some of them are back to that good class that they had, or that good team that they had last year. And for Wittenberg in there. Big game on January 7th and Tuesday to play that Bondwell team, and I think they're sitting in a good spot. Both those teams have I got to double check on the Bondwell, but Wittenberg beat Amherst significantly, so it kind of I think it was 72-48 right before the break. So right. It was they went and done their job in terms of a score, and they got Rognowski averaging almost close to 30 if the stats are right on Wiz Sports, and so he's doing well. So I think Wittenberg's sitting in a good spot other than the time off. And we've seen teams, I know we say, the time off. But I saw scores that I looked up before the show here, and some teams took a time off and did absolutely fine in that next game, right. And some teams came out a little dormant in their next game. So we'll see, and time will tell in these next games. So I think for a good matchup, make it up on the 7th there.
And as we look forward later in the show, we'll talk a little bit more about Iola, because they're always a good program as well. I think, we talk about Bondwell and Wittenberg. Iola is always part of that mix at the top of that conference as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about them and the CWC North as well, because there was not, again, very little action in the past week in that conference. We're going to come back and start our discussion on girls basketball coming up next. This is the Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. On Saturday afternoon, the third-ranked Central Wisconsin Storm girls hockey team plays host to Gentry Academy of Minnesota. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 1:50 and the opening face-off at 2 p.m. Central Wisconsin Storm Hockey on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by the Cloverbell Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurants, Sun Printing, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Coast to Coast Marketing. The Central Wisconsin Storm take on Gentry Academy of Minnesota Saturday, starting with the pregame show at 1:50 and the opening face-off at 2 p.m. live on your home for high school sports. 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, we were scheduled to have our coach guest this week from Merrill High School, Troy Pieper, but a bit under the weather. Hopefully he is covered up, having some soup, listening to the show, and know that we'll have him on very, very soon as well.
We're telling him to toughen up if he's listening. Just kidding, Coach.
Let's talk about girls basketball. Start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. You got Marshfield 3-0 in the conference, 4-4 overall. Stevens Point 2-0 in the league, 7-3 overall. Wausau West third in the conference at 2-1, 2-10 overall. So non-conference has not gone well for the Warriors so far. Then you have Merrill at 1-1 in the conference, 3-7 overall. DC Everest 1-2 in the conference, 3-7 overall. Rapids 0-2 in the conference, 1-7 overall, and East 0-3 in the conference, 0-6 overall. We've been talking about it, and it's not I hope people take it the right way. It's just one of those years right now where it's a lot of growing for these programs. So you got, I think Stevens Point came in with some high expectations. I think Marshfield always does, but generally the conference still, there's opportunities once you get into the conference. I think all these teams are probably very happy to start playing a lot more conference games right now.
Well, again, you have these reflective thoughts when you get time to write your notes and stuff for the show here, and that was one of my thoughts. Like, it's, sometimes we give a hard time. Why you in this conference, or why you here? It's nice to be home in that conference a lot of times for almost the team where your home is, whether you're in the Mirror or whether you're in the Valley, because different things can happen in that non-conference schedule within a given season. Why they're playing those games or the results of those games, and when you're having and seeing the track record of the girls' Valley Conference, where their non-conference record is lower, it's nice to have that home and have those things to look forward to, because it gives you some of that security, some of that sense of we can go get the W against each other, and for these teams to have that non-conference schedule being strong for them right now, it'll be nice to get the bulk of their conference games in here after we recoup after Christmas break.
Look, both West and Marshfield are part of the Marshfield Holiday Classic that's been going on for 15 years, and both Valley teams went 0-2. And the thing about it, the Friday game, Oshkosh West beat Wausau West 59-53. I was off doing hockey on Friday, and I came home, and this game was at halftime, so I watched the second half. At halftime, it was 33-14 Oshkosh West. West played exceptionally well in the second half. I mean, watching that game, I don't know how they only scored 14 points in the first half, because they were running the offense exceptionally well. Ayla Christensen had 19 points, Paige Anderson 16 for West. And then the next day, again, the Warriors struggled against Hudson 69-31. But I see there's some girls that have the capability of putting in the hole. It's just been the consistency right now. And I think that to have a half like they did against Oshkosh West, I was very impressed with what they did. And I think that's something you can grab hold on to as a coach. When you see that, we can tell the girls, hey, if you do things, if you execute things, you are able to compete against a good Oshkosh West team that then beat Marshfield on Saturday 61-32. So, I mean, obviously West played a very good basketball team pretty well.
Yeah, and that was what I found funny in the Marshfield tournament, how the scores kind of flip-flopped.
Yeah,
and you played one tight and you lost one, and they both ended up 0-2.
Real quickly, Hudson beat Marshfield 51-45 on Friday, and then Hudson beat West 69-31 on Saturday.
But going back to your original point of the half, you obviously put points in the basket. Obviously, you stopped their scoring. So those are both ends of the basket where you were doing good things on. And I think through your game film, through what you want to reiterate and practice, that's something you try to build off of to find the exact key components that are going to get the kids to buy in, to say, hey, here's some stuff we can build off of, and some stuff that it's shown through your consistency on the court when you've done it well and you've done it right. That it, we're, like you said, running the offense. Look, now we're putting the ball in the basket. Now it ups our energy on defense, where we can get a steal or get a stop and get back down to the offensive end where everybody wants to play most of the time anyways. So I think for them, it's going to be taking those little parts as a program and trying to expand that and make it a primary focus of things that we do right to make it into bigger parts, to find that success and get some consistency in their conference schedule. Because again, you got 3-0, 2-0, and 2-1 at the top of that. So another win or loss here by a couple of those teams are going to be a big deal in their conference standings.
And the thing, I mean, for a team like Wausau West right now, again, you look at the overall record, it's not great, but then next week you got Everest and East. And all of a sudden, they could be 4-1 in the conference very easily.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you have something to build on. And I think, again, that second half against Oshkosh West is something they can build on as well. I do think Stephen's point, just based on what we've seen so far this year, is the team that is been the most consistently solid team. And even the loss they had on Friday against Lakeland, 62-55. What a terrific matchup of a couple of the best players, I think, that are part of these conferences that we keep an eye on. You had Christina Lamette, 33 points and 13 rebounds for Lakeland, and Jada Seibert had 26 points. Again, the outstanding sophomore for Stevens Point. And then Spash was able to beat De Pere on Saturday, 55-48. But right now, unless something changes, unless something occurs, even with Marshfield, because right now they're struggling a little bit with those losses over the weekend. Stevens Point looks to be, I think, head and shoulders above the pack in the Valley.
Well, yeah, and I think for two reasons. First one is that they have the only winning record overall. From what if I looked down and wrote these down correct, right. And then
7-3.
The Lakeland score, and we know what Lakeland is with Wilmette and their tradition these last couple of years with the players that they put forth and the winning the GNC the last couple of years. I think is a kind of puts Spash up on the top of this. I just think they have more consistency in their non-conference play. they're just starting to stretch themselves out in the scores and what they're able to do. And I think that's going to be the team to beat at the top of this conference, just based on what we're seeing in records.
And DC Everest had a bit of a tough time of it, and I think in a building program like they are at DCE right now, you're going to have it. But the thing that's kind of jumped out is they have not given up 83 points in the game like they did against Eau Claire Memorial on Friday, and 83-18, that's obviously one that, again, I think for high school kids, sometimes the confidence can take a hit in a night like that, and then they came back and lost Regis, who's also in an outstanding program, 64-38. But for DCE, as the process continues, there's going to be some bumps in the road.
Right, and I think that's going to probably jump out against some of those top teams in their conference. They're going to see and defense has been their strength, and so I'm sure Coach Bullis is looking at things of why is our point values getting a little higher against some of these better teams like that, and stuff they want to cut down. So you're going to have to fight through those little moments in that first year where you're trying to reestablish the program and get the kids to buy into the system and work through things like this. So when you roll around with the spashes, even the teams that we got to get this because we want to stay in the middle of the pack, that it looks like defense is going to be kind of their thing, especially when you look at, their leading scorers putting up about 8 a game. So they want to hold you in check on the defense. And they're probably not going to outscore you right now until that consistency comes with more time. So I think, again, you can learn as much as a win can teach you a lot about your team. You can learn a ton off a loss, too, to try to better yourself and your team.
We got a couple of minutes before the top of the hour. Let's talk about the GNC before we finish up the hour. You got Lakeland and Rhinelander 4-0 in the conference, 8-3, 8-2 respectively overall. Mosinee and Tomahawk 2-1 in the conference. Mosinee 7-2, Tomahawk 5-3, and then Medford, Pines, and Antigo all winless in the conference. Lakeland played those 2 games at the Century. They lost to Laconia 62-58 on Thursday. Wilmette 22, Sailor Timmerman 15, and then you had Mosinee. They played over along with the boys over in Green Bay at that Sundrop tournament. They fell to St. Mary Catholic 71-52 on Friday. Game was tied 33-33 at halftime, but St. Mary Catholic pulled away. Talon Jershely 18, Peyton Jershely 14. And then on Saturday, Mosinee bounced back to defeat Oshkosh North 64-35. Rhinelander, they split a pair of games. Friday, they defeated Ripon 55-47, Lamers 19, Clark 17, and then they fell to the Dells on Saturday 47-34. But again, sort of a mixed bag, but they all challenge themselves.
Yeah, I sometimes like Lakeland's schedule because they always play some tougher teams. But then, to take one from Laconia by a couple points, I think it kind of makes you madder, especially with the expectations that they have. Obviously, over Spash was a nice win, and to do it on the college court's a fun environment. So, Lakeland holding serve up at the top of that conference with Rhinelander also, and both have 8 wins so far. Rhinelander, I thought a little bit surprising maybe on the Dells because they do have a scoring punch in Clark and can keep games close with the girls that they have on their team and the ability they have to fill in the basket. But they're sitting at a 4-0 mark in their conference also. And for Mosinee, I think, it's a nice bounce back because obviously when it's tied at halftime and you're rooting for your team, you expect to win that game. And so they obviously faltered a little bit in that second half against St. Mary's Catholic, but nice bounce back win against a bigger school in Oshkosh North and a significant win at 64-35 score.
One of the things I like about the GNC on the girls' side is you got these 3 teams that all can put the ball in the hole. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can have these games that are just battles of defense, but boy, between Lakeland, Rhinelander, and Mosinee, they all have some really good offensive talent.
And Mosinee, remember, their only loss is to Lakeland so far, so they're going to be in the thick of things too in that conference.
And absolutely, and it'll be interesting to see when Rhinelander does get those cracks first, both at home against Lakeland and Mosinee coming up. We're going to take a timeout for an information update at the top of the hour. News, weather, and sports, and then come back with hour number 2 of the show. We still have some basketball to talk about. We have some hockey to talk about, and our student-athlete guest is coming up next from Wausau West, senior captain Jake Hane. He'll be joining us after the information update. This is, along with Jeff Grass, I'm Chad Holmes, and this is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. And welcome back. It is hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. Along with Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, and we're very happy to welcome in our student-athlete guest for this week from Wausau West High School, senior hockey captain, co-captain, tri-captain,
Yep.
Jake Hane. And Jake, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, even a holiday came in. I really do appreciate that, and especially after a very busy weekend. Let's actually talk about the weekend because it was a lot of fun. I went over there 3 times. Came back 3 times. You guys got to stick around, but I kept coming back and forth. But 3 games in 3 days. What kind of challenge was that against really good competition?
You know, this tournament is always a challenge. There's always good competition here. Our first game on Friday against Fondy Springs, there was a good introduction to the weekend. It was some tough competition. Like I said before, there's all sorts of good competition here. But that game didn't end up going our way, and I think it was a good eye-opener for the rest of the weekend. On Saturday, we had a game against Notre Dame Academy, and we ended up winning that game 2-1. It was a great team effort, and that was the first time that we've beaten them since 2017, I believe.
Yep.
So that was a good team win. And then on Sunday, we had Verona, and we just kept our momentum going and straight into that game, and then we ended up with a decent win.
Let me ask you about the first game. Obviously, probably more fun to talk about the last 2 games.
Yep.
But was there we were actually talking about basketball and the gaps. When you're off for close to 2 weeks, not playing a game, does it take any time to get back into that rhythm in that first game?
Oh, totally. So, one thing that we try and do is get a good warm-up. That way that gap is not as big, or like we get a good start during the game. We think that a good warm-up is really important. That way, when the first puck drops, you're ready to go. First shift, you need to be ready, especially in games like those when the competition will take advantage. If you're not ready, it's really important.
Well, I was going to ask. Tell me if I'm incorrect, because Chad talked to me this about off air, and I'm not the hockey guy here. Doesn't Coach Brandt? You have some alumni that come in and play against you guys, right?
Yeah.
To keep it. I mean, and it doesn't hurt because we got a good program. Some of those guys coming back, they're not gonna slack. I mean, you guys are getting bounced around pretty good by the competition that you're playing, right? It makes you work.
Yeah, we always have alumni come in for practices over this holiday break. That's always fun. I mean, obviously, they're not doing anything too much to us. They don't want to hurt us, but
Right.
It is always interesting to see the different types of hockey players that come back. Like, we have Thomas Garum. I know Connor Wendell came back. Like, Grant Halmstead came back. It's just fun to see these good hockey players come back and get to, see how they play. That way we can learn from them.
And as much as we talk about keeping yourself fresh with that alumni coming back in and continuing to challenge yourselves as you do with your schedule, how is it grueling from a hockey standpoint to go play a couple games? I mean, because I liken it to football. Football always has one, that's physical contact. Hockey has a lot of contact. You beat your bodies up a lot. Is it hard to go 3 games in a row? Is it to recover? And I know you and Chad were just talking off air about the schedule coming up where you got a makeup game thrown in there now, and it's going to be nonstop for a couple more days. Is that a difficult thing to do as a hockey player?
Oh, totally. I know for me at least, playing. I don't like playing 2 days in a row. My legs get so tired. And, on that third game in Verona, I was definitely feeling it. But I think we have to focus on recovery when it comes to games like this. Like, I know some people were taking ice baths. I was taking ice baths. Even at the hotel, we had to go get ice from the ice machine. And, it's definitely something that challenges us. But we've done enough like off-ice things. Like, we do runs up the mountain on the off-season. We're just trying to prepare so that we can be ready for these circumstances with games back-to-back.
We're again talking to Jake Hane, Wausau West Hockey Senior, here on 98.9 WXCO. What about those last 2 games? Notre Dame Academy 2-1, come from behind 2 goals in the third period, and then a pretty dominant performance against Verona then on Sunday. What was it that your team was able to do well those 2 games?
Yeah, so on Saturday, like I mentioned before, on Friday, we definitely did not play our best game as a team. So I think we had some sort of realization that we needed to come together in some way. So on Saturday, we made sure that everybody was really focused, and we had a good warm-up. Like I said, we always try and warm up well. And then, when we were getting it ready in the locker room, Coach Brandt said that we needed to come up with 3 words ourselves to focus on during the game. And normally he comes up with these words, but I think that the fact that he was asking us to do it really put some responsibility on us to make sure that like we were ready for the game and that we had these ideas in our head that meant something to us.
Something you did differently on Saturday that was noticeable was that your guys were sitting down. What was the idea behind that? And as a captain, are you part of that discussion? It's very interesting to see that on Saturday and then Sunday, instead of, we often see the guys standing right at the edge of the boards, everybody was sitting down. And actually, that's something that the Detroit Catholic Central team, I noticed, did in all 3 of their games as well. But what was the thought process behind that, and how much of that was team determined?
Yeah, so we definitely had some influence from the Detroit Lakes team, I will not lie. So we saw that the teams that have been doing that have been more ready when they get on the ice. It really did help us recover faster. I feel like, standing up, even though it doesn't seem like it's that much if you're just standing there, it does help when you're sitting down. Everybody, I feel like, was more connected because when we're all standing on the bench, sometimes it can get kind of packed and people get pushed back, or like there's different levels. So if we're all sitting down, we're all at the same, like we can all talk to each other the same amount, and we're all sitting at the same level. So I think it's easier for communication and for rest. And, as a captain, me and Caden Boleen both agreed that this would be something different. After the game on Friday, we decided that we need some sort of change.
Right.
And, we talked to some of the guys, and we all decided that we needed to sit down and make a change.
And as a captain, I think that's a cool honor. No matter what sport it is, whether coaches play it, whether players vote on it, coaches pick it. I think it's an honor to be a captain, to be on your team. It says something about who you are and what you bring in terms of that leadership role. From your standpoint, because sometimes I've seen the players I've coached, some guys sometimes they got it in them, but they really got to work at it. Other kids just natural as can be. Is this something that you've always, from your time in the West Hockey program, wanted to be, looked forward to being, or something that you had to kind of learn and then you got the opportunity and you took it on and ran with it, or is it something that's inherent? How do you what do you look at as the captain role for yourself on this team?
Ever since I was a freshman, I knew that I wanted to be a captain, but I didn't know exactly how I wanted to go about it. So I have never really been a person to really speak out a lot, especially when I was younger. When I was a little kid, I was always really quiet. And this is something that I've had to learn a little bit, is speaking out. And I feel like that's one trait that I have definitely gotten better at. And I think that all captains or leaders should have this trait. Like, I've been in leadership positions before, like at school. I'm the president of a club, and that was one starting point that really got me going into like dealing with people's problems. Like, more people come to me with problems, and I feel like it's important to see all sides of all issues too. And
it's fun to have control too. I got short man's complex, but I like having control.
Yeah, totally. It is nice having another captain too. Kane Boleen and me we're always talking, and it's always nice to having these conversations with Coach Brandt and with the other players. Trying to solve the issues on the team and trying to take steps in the right directions.
Actually, one reason why you're here is being a captain on the team, but also a few weeks ago, Coach Brandt was in that chair because Jeff was doing something else. And we were actually talking, before the show, and one thing that he said about you, talking about some of the players, and he said one thing about you is that whenever you do events, especially with kids, that you take them very seriously, that you are somebody that he can count on to be represent the program very, very well. Do you look at that as something that is important to you, not just what you do on the ice, not just what you do in the locker room, but everything that you do when you're wearing a Wausau West hockey sweatshirt like tonight, or events like that?
I think that you should treat everything with importance, especially when it comes to a team like this hockey team. This hockey team's a family. We need to represent it well, and I like to represent myself well too. So whenever we're doing events like the Try Hockey for Free or the Special Hockey, I always make sure that everybody feels like they have like they're accounted for, and that we make sure that everybody has a good time at these sponsored events because we need to make sure that Wausau West has a good name.
Yeah, man, we'll get back to some hockey. Let's talk a little bit outside hockey. Are you involved in any other sports?
Right now, I'm only involved in hockey and golf. So those are my school sports. And I guess, I have one season left of golf in the spring, and then that'll be it.
I've noticed that sometimes that after a very intense winter season, that guys like to be involved in golf. I mean, it's a little different. It is not quite the level of intensity that maybe you get on the ice. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely.
Is that one reason why you like to do it? That you still have your foot involved in some athletics, but maybe not at the same emotional level that you would have during the winter?
Yeah, totally. I think it's a great spring sport. Right before summer. It's something light. I mean, I don't know how much my golf coach would like me saying that, Mr. Marker. I don't know how much you'd like me saying that, but golf is fun, and it's something to keep me busy in the spring. So that's why I think of golf.
You mentioned, obviously enjoy the captain role and the leadership role, and something you've grown into and made into who you are as part of West Hockey, but you also. Your coach mentioning that you take those roles very seriously with helping out and mentoring the youth to become better just because it's the right thing to do. I love that answer. Just it's the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. Does any of those leadership roles or even being good at the little kid stuff, because I know some guys, they shy away from that. The kid comes over with the runny nose and touches your shirt. You want to run the other way. Little things like that. Is any of that going to lead into what you might want to do in the future? Are you want to coach, or what your major in college, or anything you're thinking about in that direction, or is it totally opposite way?
In my very far future, I would love to get into some sort of like nonprofit and like coaching, but I don't really see myself doing that. I'd say before I'm 40. So, like I plan to go to college, get a job, and then maybe after I have a family, if my kid plays hockey, I would definitely consider coaching hockey there, or starting like programs for special hockey or try hockey for free. I just love seeing people happy and helping people.
That's cool.
So,
do you have any idea what you would like to be involved in? What kind of business life that you would have in your young adult life after you get done with schooling?
Yeah, so I'd love to go to college and get a engineering degree, actually. So I could see myself moving out to like California or Texas, because I think I want to go into the energy industry. I might major in chemical engineering, so focusing on like biofuels and renewable energy. Those would be my interests as of now. I don't really see myself staying around the Midwest for stuff like that, but I guess we'll see where it takes me.
Have you decided where you want to go to school?
Yeah, so I'm either going to go to the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities or the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And do you have right now, with your high school career yet, do you have a favorite class? Do you have classes you gravitate towards that are better, that you enjoy a lot?
This year I can't say that I dislike any of my classes. I like my AP Biology class, my math classes. I have an engineering class that I really like. And I guess, I really like going to school. I like learning. I like the process. I just like the entire, I'm going to say, the society of high school. Like, I like all the clubs. I like all the extracurriculars. I like the people.
What clubs are you involved in? I know you listed a couple, but you said something a little bit before. But
yeah, so I am involved in Spanish Club, National Honor Society. That's what I'm the president of. DECA. I like DECA. I've competed in DECA at the state level too, so I'm really involved there. And in a club called Link Crew, which helps incoming freshmen and giving tours to transfer students and new students.
We often ask high school athletes, because you're busy. Your job is your school or sport, or however that all intertwines, and all the. I'm always impressed with the amount that, like what you just listed, the amount that you're willing to give of your time, to find your time. Do you ever find it hard to balance all that, or does it come pretty naturally and you like to be busy? And if you're not busy, there's something wrong because you're so used to it.
This past year I've definitely kept busy. I feel like whenever I have free time, I always fill it somehow, but sometimes it does get to be a lot. Like, sometimes if I have a hockey commitment and then like a commitment with a club and I need to make a presentation for this club, but I need to be at this hockey event and I got homework I need to do for all these classes, sometimes my sleep schedule, gets a little out of whack. But
I was going to ask you, like that Monday night we have coming up where you have to go to Chippewa.
Oh, yeah.
That's a long trek on a
is.
Monday evening. How do you go about trying to make sure that everything that needs to be done is done? Do you have a plan, or do you, as it comes, do you have figure out a way to make it happen?
One thing I really try and do is plan out stuff like that ahead, because if I know I'm going to be gone, I will try and make sure that I catch up. I'm assuming we're going to leave early that day too, so I'll make sure that I let my teachers know that I get all the work that I will miss and make sure that all my homework is done for that day, just to make sure that I'm ready for the next day of class.
Do you have a favorite teacher?
So this engineering class that I've taken for the past 4 years, he's been my teacher. His name is Mr. Peterson. I really enjoy him in his class. He's just been an awesome teacher the past 4 years.
It's always nice to get a shout out for one of the teachers out there.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Again, we're talking to Jake Hane, Wausau West Warrior hockey captain here on 98.9 WXCO. Let's talk a little bit more about the team this year. You're 8-4 so far. You're 3-1 in the Wisconsin Valley Conference. You've retained the Marathon Cup, which is something that's happened probably since before you were born.
Yeah, I guess.
It's been such a long time. As you look at this team so far, you obviously you have your hand on the pulse of this team as a captain. What has impressed you about this group of Wausau West Warriors so far this year?
We have a great group of guys. One thing that is special about this team is there's so many returning varsity athletes, like the junior class. So many of them played varsity last year, and just watching them mature this year and become better hockey players and better people, watching them, grow mentally too, becoming more mature on and off the ice has really helped us as a team. And it's just been cool to see all the growth that happens, on and off the ice. Like I said, we do a lot of off-ice activities too. Like we go to breakfast, we lift, we do everything. Like we do gift exchanges. We truly are a family. So
let's talk about your game. What's the best thing you do on the ice?
I'd say compared to most people you bring in this show, I am definitely not a point scorer per se. I would call myself more of a role player. Like I think that every single time I go out on the ice, I try my hardest. And one thing that I really like doing is killing penalties. And I think just the most important thing is that you know your role on the team, whatever that is. And I just know my role is sometimes not to put pucks in the back of the net, but to help in other ways and make sure that we don't get scored on.
And this year, the penalty kill, I think, has been much improved from a year ago. Would you say that's fair to say?
I would say.
And generally, special teams have been much better this year, haven't they?
Yes, for sure. I think that comes with the maturity part, too, because last year was a bunch of sophomores that were on these special teams, and now it's juniors and seniors, and they've had another year of experience. So I think that's where you're seeing that growth from.
Speaking of growth, is there anything that, as being a captain and obviously, knowing your team and what with expectations, just from my knowledge of West hockey, you want to stay up in the top of the conference. You play a very tough conference schedule or non-conference schedule, so you're always challenging yourselves, and you want to do well in all that. Anything the team needs to, because, as much as we say this rest of the, we're in the second half of the season, stuff's going to fly by. There's still a lot of hockey left to be played too. Anything you think you guys need to work on as a collective group that'll help continue to stay up in the top of the conference, continue to beat these tough non-conference opponents?
Yeah, one thing that I think we could work on is our structure. Whenever we get scored on, it's a breakdown of structure. And, some of the goals, like the past two games, have been goals that maybe shouldn't have been goals. They've been kind of, I don't know, like Julian has tried to sit on one of them and it just snuck past him.
Right.
There could have been two shutouts there, and those two are probably some of the best games that we've played. And there's been no breakdown in structure, and those goals that went in just happened to trickle in the net. It wasn't really something that was completely our fault. And when you look at other games that we've lost, like the University School game, it's been breakdowns in structure that have cost us those goals, I feel. So
Do you have a favorite opponent that you like, that you guys really like to play against, whether it's on your non-conference schedule or in your conference? With all the hockey, I love the way you guys do your schedule because it's constant challenge. There it is, a night off. Let's go play. For the most part, not a night off. A team over the years you've loved to face that you've played on their schedules.
Yeah, I would say our number one team to play is definitely Spash. It's it's always a tough game, and everybody comes to that game too. It's always so fun. The barn's always packed during the Spash game, and it's always good competition too. It brings out the best in both of us. The last game was really exciting. I think we came out strong, and then the second period kind of got the best of us, but then we ended up losing that game 3-4. But, we're ready to come back at them.
Let me ask you about Stevens Point, because they're undefeated. They're number one ranked. You gave them as good a go of it as anybody this season. You said 4-3. It was a wonderful night. I mean, real quickly, when you have a night like that where they're lined up 3 deep behind the boards and every seat in the house is filled, does it feel differently for the players?
Oh, totally. Coach always tells us to keep our heads in the glass, but it's really hard to do that when there's so many people there. I'd say that the pressure is up, but that could be a good thing because I feel like when there's pressure, the people start to perform better. I know I always perform better when there's people that are there, and like I said, the pressure is high. When the stakes are high, the people will come out and play their best.
You mentioned that it was the first time in a number of years you beat Notre Dame Academy. It's been a few years since Warriors have beat Stevens Point. As you look at again, this is a really good Stevens Point team. I mean, they really have done the job against everybody so far this season. Do you feel as though that you guys do have the secret sauce to be able to compete against them and beat them, whether it's at KB Willett or even in the playoffs?
Yes, we totally have the capabilities. Like I said, during that game, it was breakdowns in structure that really cost us those goals. Looking back at film, there's just little mistakes that cost those big turnovers, and those can be easily fixed. And if we play a complete game, I think we could come out with a win.
I gotta ask you something that's kind of jumped out, because I think back to the Stevens Point game, and then I think about the game against Verona on Sunday. Both those games, you've had goals after 7 seconds when the other team scored. Is there a mentality within this group that says, you don't get knocked down when you give up a goal?
Yeah, I think that even just the way we played on Saturday versus Friday, on Friday we definitely it got the best of us, but then on Saturday we came out raging. So I feel like on a smaller scale, that's definitely what happens right there. Is we get scored on, and then we're like, all right, screw you, we're gonna go, we're gonna go score another goal right now.
Right.
So I think that's something to be said about.
Obviously, you seem to know your team well, yourself well, all that. What are you going to – so you probably know West hockey well is what I'm saying. What are you going to miss when it's all – I always like to know with seniors. It's been it's as much as it's been long, stressful probably, it's also been fun and rewarding, and is part of your life that hopefully you always look back on when you reminisce about it, that it was a good venture. What are you going to miss most about your time in West hockey?
I can talk about playing and, scoring and being out on the ice, but I think the thing that I'm definitely going to miss the most, and something that I've been missing for, I'd say, 3 years, every single year seniors leave, is just the family factor. I know I said that we're a family, and I think that's really true. More than, I'd say, most sports in high school, we are pretty much a year-round sport. In the spring, we don't do too much, but over the summer, we have a summer tournament. We have summer ice every Sunday, and just getting to know the guys, and it's just unreal because these people you're going to know the rest of your life, and it's just a really good group of guys, like I said before.
Along that line, and I don't know whether or not I should ask you this, but I'm going to ask you it anyways, because
All right.
Because I notice, because I've been fortunate enough to do every game except one this year. I decided to pass on the EMU game. Did you score in the EMU game by any chance?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so I'm sorry I missed that one. But at the end of every game, I see you and a couple of teammates. I think it's Ethan Rohde and Tyler Wendell, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. You guys go to the center of the rink, go into the center circle and take a knee and spend a moment together. Could you explain why you do that, and maybe along the same lines of maybe the connection you have with your teammates?
Yeah, so after every game, me, Tyler, and Ethan always go to center ice, and we say a little prayer. We switch whoever does it. We just say, "Oh, Wendy, you got this one," or "Rhodey, you got this one," and we always just say a little something and just try and get the Lord on our side. Before every single game, we always pray as a team too. So I feel like bringing out some sort of belief really helps.
Anything else, Jeff?
No. You want me? You got it, or you want me to?
Why don't you give it more?
All right.
I usually do it, but
we love when we have seniors in because the perspective they can bring. You know, you had your high school career; it's almost over. So I think you got a unique perspective on how meaningful it can be versus sometimes with an underclassman. There's always time left. So, for yourself, you know, you've been in the leadership role. You know West hockey. You're obviously done the busyness of that high school lifestyle. What advice would you give to a player that rolls in as a freshman to make the most of their high school career in West hockey?
You know, one thing that I would say is no matter where you end up as a freshman, there's always room for improvement. Like as a freshman, I came in, like I said, I'm definitely not the most skilled person out there, but I would consider myself a hard worker. So I came in as a freshman and I was completely straight JV, but by the end of the year, I'd worked hard, and coaches see when you work hard. And, you know, even though somebody's not always watching, you need to make sure that you're doing the right things, and it'll show later, whether that's, you know, during your freshman year or your sophomore year. But when you do the things right, it'll start to show. And like by the end of my freshman year, I got to play in some varsity games. I actually scored a goal in my first varsity game. So that was pretty exciting back in my freshman year. So I think if you work hard, it'll pay off for sure.
Jake Hane, senior captain for the Wausau West Warriors. Thank you very much for popping on over tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck the rest of the way. 12 games down in the regular season, 12 games to go, and then hopefully another, handful or half a dozen or so to finish it off in the postseason, right?
Yep, exactly.
Jake Hane of the Wausau West Warriors. We're going to take a quick time out and be right back. Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO.
Big results from holiday tournaments and classics as we head into the new year. I'm Travis Wilson, and this is a WisSports.net Minute brought to you by Just a Game Fieldhouse in Wisconsin Dells. More high school sports news after this. You may have heard of Just a Game Fieldhouse in Wisconsin Dells, one of the country's premier destinations for youth sports and events, but did you know that Just a Game does so much more? Just a Game also delivers end-to-end apparel, equipment, and event solutions with their state-of-the-art screen printing and embroidery facility that can help with branding for your team and business items, including uniforms, apparel, and more. Just a Game also offers digital services that include a cashless digital platform and event live streaming. Just a Game has also added a second brand new facility in Reedsburg. Find more information at justagame.com. A very happy new year to everyone out there, but before we celebrate 2025, let's take a look back at the final week of high school sports for 2024. The De Pere boys basketball team dropped a tough matchup against Wisconsin Lutheran just before the holiday break, but the Redbirds rebounded in resounding fashion with a pair of high-profile victories at Concordia University in Mequon. First, it was a thrilling 75-73 victory over previously undefeated and D3 top-ranked Milwaukee Academy of Science on Friday, as senior Badger commit Zach Kinziger scored 35 points. He'd add 24 points the next night as the Redbirds down D2 second-ranked Wauwatosa West 68-52. After setting the school's career assist record a couple weeks ago, Amory senior Carter Wolin showed he's also one of the state's top scorers, pouring in 52 points, another school record, in a blowout win over Hayward. Prairie du Chien senior Blake Thierry was named the WFCA Small School Offensive Player of the Year this fall, and again proved why he's one of the top overall athletes in the state, with a championship at the Bi-State Wrestling Classic over break. After scoring a major decision in the semifinals over Aquinas' Tyson Martin, who had defeated him earlier this year, Thierry won the 215-pound title with a 4-2 decision against Port Washington's Garrett Kaczynski, who had beat him in the event finals last year. This has been a WisSports.net Minute. Check us out online at WisSports.net.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And again, don't forget, you can catch our program as a podcast as well. If you go to civicmedia.us, go to the shows page. If you go to WXCO.FM, click on the On Air tab, and that'll take you to the shows page. And you can also subscribe on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts as well. So you can go back, and if you missed any of the programs, including our podcast-only show last week, you can go back and hear what Jeff Gress had to say. But thanks to Jake Hane, a really impressive young man from Wausau West. You can see why he's a captain, obviously. I think you can see the leadership qualities and again, really handles himself exceptionally well.
Well, and for younger players listening, what you'd want to be, well-rounded in your personal life, hard worker with the sport, and obviously it shows in just the way he carries himself, the effort, the leadership, and the responsibility he feels to doing things right, doing things well. I think that's a big deal in today's society, that you're out there for a purpose and you want to make the most of it.
Let's look at what happened in hockey last week. We mentioned Wausau West played at the Showdown in Titletown. They fell on Friday 5-2 to St. Mary Springs, the defending Division II state champs. They're number 5 ranked in the state. And then they defeated Notre Dame Academy, the 2-time defending Division I state champion, 2-1. It was a big win for Wausau West. They were down 1-0 for a big chunk of that game, scored twice in the third period to pull out the W, and then were very impressive in scoring 7 unanswered goals after falling behind 1-0 and beat Verona 7-1. And again, 3 really good opponents. A 2-1 weekend is the best weekend they've had in Green Bay in a number of years, and they're 8-4 overall. They're 3-1 in the Wisconsin Valley Conference, behind only Stevens Point and Spash. They played in a tournament over in Neenah over the weekend, and they won it. They won 3 straight games. Very impressive. They beat University School of Milwaukee 5-2. USM had beat West earlier this year, so I saw them, and that's a good hockey team. And then on Friday, Stevens Point defeated Neenah Hortonville Menasha, another top team that's been in the top 6 rankings most of the year, 4-2. And then they beat Tomahawk in the championship round 8-2 on Saturday. So Stevens Point looking really good. Wausau West, I think, looking very solid. It's going to be very, very exciting when they do face off at KB Willett coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it sounds like from what Jake described, and obviously that's their top rival, the team they want to get. So I think it's neat to have that tight conference rivalry at the top of the schedule.
DC Everest also hosted a holiday hockey tournament this weekend, and they earned the championship. Everest beat Whitefish Bay on Friday 6-0, and then they came back and beat Sheboygan 4-3 on Saturday. So a good weekend for Everest. Right now they are in 3rd place in the Valley at 3-2. EMU, East Merrill United, had an event over in Wapaka. They had 3 games in 3 days. A lot of goals were scored on Friday. Blue Jacks fell to Wapaka 6-4. Then on Saturday, Blue Jacks put up 7, but they gave up 11. That's a very high-scoring hockey game. Black River Falls beat the Blue Jacks 11-7. And then Sunday, they finally put it together. They scored a lot of goals and gave up none, beating Green Bay United 7-0. So for EMU, an interesting weekend. When you score 7, and 4 goals, that's a lot of goals in a 3-day span. Finished 1-2 in that weekend of activity.
I was going to say, interesting. Yeah, interesting on the score. I mean, you just don't usually see an 11-7 game, and you'd say, yeah, we had 7, but we took 1. So some obviously consistency on the offensive end.
And looking ahead this week, in terms of the activity going on in the Wisconsin Valley Conference, not much going on in conference quite yet this week. DC Everest heads up to Barron to take on the Northwest Icemen on Friday. Stevens Point would look to stay undefeated Friday in a non-conference game against Chippewa Falls. And then next Tuesday, the conference gets back into play. Wausau West has the conference bye next Tuesday. But otherwise, EMU is at Marshfield, Stevens Point hosting Wisconsin Rapids, and DC Everest will be home against Rhinelander in a non-conference game. So that's a look at the Valley. Girls hockey, Central Wisconsin Storm were involved in the Culver's Cup tournament down in Madison. And the Storm on Thursday shut out Lakeshore Lightning 8-0. They then lost in double overtime to St. Croix Valley 5-4 on Friday. Second time this season, the Storm have played a team for a second time, and the second time this season, they had lost to them after beating them the first time. They beat St. Croix Valley by, I think it was 5-2 or 6-2 the first time, and this time they lost 5-4. Same thing happened against Hayward the first time around. Beat them the first time and then lost in double overtime the second. And then the Storm in the third place game on Saturday shut out the Cap City Cougars 6-0. Storm have a busy week coming up. They will be home at Green Heck on Friday against Western Wisconsin. Then Saturday afternoon, an interesting game. They will take on a team from Minnesota, Gentry Academy, a team from the Twin Cities area. They'll be taking on the Storm Saturday. We'll have the game for you. 1:50 airtime, 2 o'clock face-off here on WXCO. And on Tuesday, they will be back in action at Marathon Park, taking on Northland Pines. So that's a peek at what's been going on in high school hockey in the past week. Let's get back. We had not finished up the girls' side in high school girls basketball. Merriwood Conference girls, Stratford 6-0 in the conference, 9-1 overall. Assumption 5-0 in the conference, 8-0 overall. Marathon 4-1 in the conference, 7-1 overall. Auburndale 3-2 in the league, 6-2 overall. Newman 1-5 in conference, 1-7 overall. Edgar 0-5 and 3-8. And Assumption got a big win against Bondwell. We've been talking a lot about Bondwell this year in the CWC East. And Assumption on Friday defeated Bondwell 54-49. And Stratford lost for the first time this year. They had beat Cochrane Fountain City 46-36 on Friday, but then lost to Bangor 64-40 on Saturday. So Assumption, great non-conference win, and then for the first time Stratford, like we talked earlier, I think it was Rhinelander on the boys' side, the first loss by a pretty significant amount.
Right, and for Assumption, I think was one of they hadn't played for a little while. They were off since December 16th because it probably had a game that was on the snow day,
the marathon game.
Yeah, so that one was moved a little bit, and it's always interesting to see how teams pop back and keep pace. So for Assumption, that's a good win over a very good team in that CWC East for the girls. Stratford, you don't know enough about these teams sometimes because we don't cover them. So is that a fair loss? Is Bangor really good? I guess we'll see. They're still keeping pace in the conference is a big deal. Still a good record at 9-1. So I think good things happen. They, though, will get themselves compared a little bit because they're going to play Bangor this Friday, Bondwell this Friday.
Yeah.
So it'll kind of give you a comparison score before Stratford and Assumption meet in conference play at some point.
And Marathon won for the 7th time in 8 games this year. On Friday, they got past Marshfield Columbus 52-48. Miley Halkey with 12 points for the Red Raiders. And I do think that we still have to see Marathon face a team like Assumption or even a team like Auburndale to see, again, they've off to a great start, obviously, but I think the real meat of their schedule is still to come.
And I think, that 7-1 start's great, 4-1 in the conference, some very good overall records, and some things to see as the conference starts to unfold with some of these big games coming up that are going to hit in early January.
CWC East girls, Bondwell, 5-0 in the conference, 7-2 now overall. Whitburn still undefeated, 4-0 conference, 8-0 overall. And then you have a bunch of teams with 2 losses, Manawa, Amherst, and Wyowega. Shiocton 2-3, Iola and Menominee Indian 0-4 in the conference. After taking a bit of a break, Whitburn got back into play on Monday, defeating Marinette 54-23. Milena Granquist 21 points, 12 boards. Rory Salveson 12 points as well for Whitburn. But we're getting ready for the big ones coming up very soon.
Yeah, and before that, I think that Wittenberg gets out and challenges themselves again because they'll play Mosinee on
That will be
conference.
interesting.
So that'll be a good game. But they're keeping pace. Obviously, there's only one more win for Bondwell, so both teams are out front with unblemished records. But I think Wittenberg doing what they do, where they've got a number of offensive performers and have just continued that trek off last season's success, where they're going to play really well within their conference and their non-conference schedule.
And it's always interesting, again, like you say, these comparison games. You got Whitburn taking on Crandon on Friday, and then Crandon taking on Bondwell on Monday. So you always get that little comparison before they
I know. As a coach, I always liked it to be like,
Right.
we got to go up against the top dogs in the conference, but how do they do against these other teams? Are we going to fare well? Do we have to really put the pressure on a little bit to make sure we perform at the abilities we have to based on those scores? So I like the comparison factor.
Merriwood North, Prent, we talked a bit about this last week, and there was no action within the conference since then. Prentice 4-2 in the conference, tied with Rib Lake for first place. Phillips right there at 3-2 in the conference. Then Athens 1-4, Abbotsford 1-4, Shawamigan 0-5. And again, I like these competitive conferences where you have a lot of these teams that there's going to be a lot of interesting games when Rib Lake and Phillips and Prentice all get together in that league. And then when it's all said and done, there's going to be teams probably maybe 4 losses will win a conference.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, like you said, all
because those
top
crossovers
3
also
teams,
count.
Yeah, have 2 losses right now, so some of those crossovers become a big one big single game at that moment. But I think Prentice right before break or at December 20th, that last conference win they had was big to kind of play pace with Rib Lake that was at the top at the time. And Phillips is hanging around. Phillips is going to be up there either way.
Right.
And they all have 5 wins overall, so sitting with 4, 3, and 2 losses right in order.
Let's kind of look ahead now on the girls' side. We'll talk about the games on the boys' side after that. But when you look at the girls, you get for the Valley, you have a night of non-conference coming up on Friday night. Holman against West, Merrill hosting Tomahawk, Marshfield home against La Crosse Central, Rapids at Rhinelander, Appleton West at Spash on Saturday, and then coming up next Tuesday back into the conference. It's really a great time now for the Valley, both on the girls and the boys side, because you have these conference games that really you start to go into the Tuesday, Friday, alternating, a lot of conference games. Next Tuesday, West is at Everest, and I think both teams will look at that as an opportunity. Rapids and East, I think, again, Rapids, I think, especially, but East at the same time. Rapids has, again, struggled a little bit. Merrill is at Stevens Point. A tough one for Coach DeBoer, I think, for that one. And Marshfield against Eau Claire Memorial. And Marshfield probably saw that Eau Claire Memorial put up that, 82 points against Everest last weekend as well. But anything jump out with the Valley?
Well, with the Valley, I do like the one more non-conference game. Kind of coming off break, you can solidify things coming out of your practice schedule here, and then whether they're all going to probably practice tomorrow and kind of make sure your team's kind of good to go into that non-conference game quickly before you hit, like you said, the Tuesday, Fridays. So I like that idea, but Merrill, just take little things so Merrill, they had a tough one against Argyle, Pecatonica, and then also against Marshfield in those Marshfield tournaments. There's some discrepancies and some big score differentiation. So for them, they do get Tomahawk on Friday, which I think will be a good game for them to get. And then they've tried to play Spash really tough the last couple of years, and I think
they beat them one time.
So I think that there's that looming always with the confidence factor for that team, and then to go get one on the road against them is something you want to do. Everest and West, I think, will be an interesting play there with Everest kind of the new face in coaching, and then for West, I think we've talked about Spash is up at the top, then probably Marshfield and everybody else is kind of fighting a little bit for that. So I think that's a significant game, and not to take away, every team wants to go out there and perform to the best of their ability and win. So for Rapids and East, that's a big game to kind of get yourself out of the cellar of that conference and not be the final team down there at the bottom.
Great Northern Conference, again, a mixture of non-conference games and conference games. Anything jump out for that?
Let's see. I think looking at, Rhinelander's going to jump over a little bit, and they get the Valley game against Rapids for this Friday. So I think that'll be just something to watch to see when you cross over conferences like that. Mosinee at Wittenberg on Monday, I think, will be a good game. It'll be interesting to see how those two teams fare. And you got teams that we don't kind of know what they're about. Tomahawk is 5-3 overall and 2-1, and we'll see what they're able to do against a team that we've seen perform a little bit with Merrill already. So I think little things like those plays outside the conference early on for the GNCOB there, and Lakeland already jumping a little bigger, playing I believe West De Pere would be a Division I school on Saturday the 4th is going to be another chance for them to challenge themselves.
Some real interesting games, both non-conference and conference at the Merrill South. You got the Bonduel and Auburndale, and Bonduel and Stratford. You got then the conference games next Tuesday, Marathon and Auburndale. I think a very interesting test for the Red Raiders, especially. Can they continue to build on what they've accomplished? And then Assumption and Stratford battle for first place.
Yeah, I like. I would like to see where Stratford's standing after these couple games. They got Bonduel this Friday, and then next Tuesday is the one for somebody's going to end up with one loss there right away out of the gate. So for Assumption Stratford on Tuesday, I think that's going to be a nice battle. And then you want to start separating yourselves and see what these teams are made of. For Marathon Auburndale, they're both sitting there in the middle of the pack right now, and you want more separation to keep tail with those first-place teams. So looking to get that game on January 7th. And then I think it's big for Newman Catholic and Edgar. I mean, I kind of know where Newman stands, where they're always trying to stay as healthy as they can and continue to keep girls out for that program. So for them to have a team where they're going to want to keep pace against Edgar, I think is a big deal for them to pop back, especially after they haven't played for a while. So they want to keep pace and do the job they can be after being off for quite a while in terms of their game schedule.
Let's jump to the boys because we only have about 10 minutes to go. Because there's a lot of interesting games coming up in the next week on the boys' side, starting with the Wisconsin Valley Conference, and you got that non-conference game you touched on, Rhinelander and Wausau East. I mean, if you're in town on Friday night, that sounds like a good one to check out because Rhinelander obviously has been playing excellent basketball in the GNC. And then you got Wausau East, who's also been playing excellent basketball. 2 losses combined between those two teams. And then you jump into the conference next Tuesday with some interesting matchups as well, starting with Everest and West.
Yeah, the East Rhinelander game. I mean, it's just even over the years, it's always been kind of a rivalry game because when Rhinelander, they used to play Rhinelander in the conference for so often, and then before they shifted, and then they were one of the teams that kept pace with continuing to play them among some other ones, but East always did that. And I think even when one team's been better than the other, it's still been a war. So I think now that they both have very good records, that I think it's a little bit at stake with playoffs and seeding and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be a good game. For East, I love the fact that when you have a tough non-conference game or a good one that should be a good battle, they get to come into your gym. So I think that's a big deal for there. And then looking at some of the the conference games, some teams lay dormant for a little bit. Like you take Marshfield, I don't think they play till January 10th against Spash unless I'm missing a game in there. I don't see so that's a little bit of time up. Again, they just came off a road trip to Florida with 3 games. For Spash and Maryland, Coach Pieper's always they play a very physical style of basketball, and he's gonna have his team ready to go. And so next Tuesday, Spash going over to Maryland, I think will be a good game to see where that physicality meets Spash's talent and the Owie story and what that kid can bring to the table coming back. And I think let's see, what do you got? Everest West on January 7th. I think that's going to be a fun one because those two teams, you've seen their development. You see they're at West is healthier, Everest is not. Where do we all stand with that? And I think that plays into kind of where chips can fall a little bit in the conference right now and who wins that game and what you're willing to want to do going forward and what type of team you're going to be.
Great Northern Conference. You got a mix of non-conference and conference games, but you don't see the major showdowns at this point.
Right. You got Rhinelanders got 3 Lakes after they have the East.
I guess the Mosany Pines game is sort of intriguing in a sense, playing up in Eagle River, because we've talked about Pines looking like they have some of the seeds to be dangerous, and that's never an easy trek for Mosany to get up to Eagle River on a Tuesday night.
No, I think those long trips can, as coaches, you're constantly working in your kids' heads. Like, we got to get off the bus. We got to be ready for this one. We don't want to, especially when Mosany, on paper, what they're showing in their scores, should serve on that game. They should be able to take that. But, you never know. You're in somebody else's gym. That other team, Northern Pines is a competitive team, but I don't know if they have the firepower to stay with Mosany, especially the Mosany's playing with that 8-1 record, and them and Rhinelander wanting to keep pace with each other. I just looking at some of those other games, it intrigues me when teams cross conferences. I know Lakeland, we talked about just kind of trying to develop their identity a little bit. They're going to host Edgar on Friday, so I think that'll be one interesting non-conference game to see as those two teams play each other, because I still think Edgar, I know I saw some of their scores over, they lost to Crandon, I believe, and they beat Wabeno Leona over break, and I think that they're still a team they're always going to be in the thick of things with the physicality and the athleticism they have within that school, but still a team looking for some consistency yet that they haven't had before break. But a team that I think can creep up on some people in the Marywood.
Marywood South is a bunch of non-conference games. It's always interesting. We had the back-to-back conference games right before Christmas, and now a little bit of a break on the conference side.
Yeah, you've got Auburndale at Necedah, which, after coming off those wins against Wyowega, Fremont, and Neelsville, looking to continue to stay 3-0 on that pace since Christmas break in their non-conference games. But then they have a little time off for Auburndale because they don't jump back till January 10th against Chequamegon. Marathon, I think when they play Colby, it's kind of always a fun one to go across just a little bit of the central part of the state there and play each other, which will be their Monday game. Stratford, they always have kind of a war with Stanley Boyd. You got two football schools that are going at it, but we'll see if those teams can keep pace at their overall marks of just keeping it to 1 in the loss column. I like when you get the Assumption game with Pacelli. I mean, Pacelli, I know they lost Aui to transfer, but they still have some pretty good players on that team and some kids that can put the ball in the basket. It's that old CWCC rivalry from the Catholic Conference school days. So, and then we had mentioned Edgar is non-conference, and Newman's off for a while. It's interesting to see how they bounce back because they don't have Phillips till January 10th.
They'll say, this is a basketball.
Yeah, there's just a long time in between there, and it's interesting to see how teams come back after that distance where they've had off for that long.
Any thoughts on anything in the Merriwood North that catches the eye? They do have a couple of conference games coming up on Monday.
Since I've seen Abby play and the pace they run up and down the floor, I'm always curious to see what they do in their next game. I know that Rib Lake held them off to an 8-point difference, but they impressed me when I watched them play Newman on how they get up and down the floor. And if I don't know not knowing quite enough about them, how confidence teams feels getting in a foot race with them because they play that open style ball, which is a little unpredictable, but it works for them. So I'll be interested to see how Phillips does against them on Thursday, right out of the gates tomorrow night.
And one of the two massive games in the CWC East this season will be on Tuesday. Wittenberg-Burnhamwood travels to Bondwell.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, it's the first one to give you the leverage in the conference, and I think it's going to be a war for Wittenberg. I sometimes like the fact that if I know I've got to fight for this conference, then I got to go over there and play first.
Yeah.
I'd rather have them the second time at my place. So I think Wittenberg, in terms of the scheduling, wins out on that. And I know it's a ways off yet, but I know Northern Lutheran with our guest Andrew looking to keep pace in that. It's not till January 16th, but they got Tigerton, and both those teams are kind of in the upper part of that conference. So interesting to
and Northern returns to action Tuesday at Nakusa.
Got a little time off in their breaks too.
And they always, but their non-conference games tend to be pretty. They're always playing up. That's
bigger
one thing.
Teams, they'll hit Wild Rose.
It's hard to play smaller though. I mean, but at the same time, but still, a lot of these games against bigger schools are on the road, and sometimes that skews the record a little bit, but I think that they do challenge themselves exceptionally well. So that's a look at a lot of the interesting games coming up this week. Got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything on your mind that you want to touch on last couple of minutes?
Watched enough basketball in this area. I feel like a broken record sometimes when I say it, but I don't know, because teams have proven us right or wrong both ways. We've seen teams take a dormant time in their schedule,
real quickly, it feels like there's a lot fewer teams that are dormant, doesn't there? There used to be a lot more of them.
Yeah, there was a lot of action when you're writing out the tournament schedule, but I still am trying to see, because you saw a team like Assumption hadn't played for a little while, and they get Bondwell, just in terms of the way their schedule was, and these aren't all based on teams deciding to do that. We've got weather situations. We've got teams. I saw a couple even cancellations on some of the schedules where it looked like one of the teams couldn't come up to the tournament. There's a couple girls tournaments where they only got one game of a 2-game tournament.
That would sting.
Yeah, so I don't know. I like the idea. I think the best option is always to stay active, but there are teams that prove that this refocusing time is always a good thing too. So it'll be interesting to see how going forward that plays out in their conference schedule. Who's ready to make that run and push when the season gets here for conference.
We got about 40 seconds to go. Is there a change of mentality once you turn the calendar?
Definitely. I think there's more pressure both on coaches, players to perform and stay consistent, as well as it is to see who, if there is an injury or a sickness bug, who can fight through that and make the best adjustments, because those things really, they become much more potent in the second half of the season when you're missing players for key circumstances, and it's all about that consistency, because you want to rise to that occasion that you're playing your best ball when February rolls around.
Fantastic. Well, man, it goes by fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, you get worried about filling the time, and there's no problem with that.
No, I'm never worried about filling the time anymore.
Yeah.
We haven't learned that lesson, but we'll be back next week.
Awesome. Appreciate the opportunity, Chad.
Thanks to Ian Welsh, our in-studio engineer as well. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, presented by K5 Construction.